Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Golden Doors Award event. And we're going to discuss today about the multiculturalism is the new normal. And we have an amazing panel, so welcome if you are watching. And of course, my name is Ernold van Bueren. I'm one of the, let's say, I'm from LernTV. And people who know LernTV know that the Golden Awards are available on there as well on our, let's say, TV channel. Now, before we're going to start, I just want to do a quick round with our amazing speakers that we have today. And I just want to start with the introduction of Mystqx. So Mystqx, welcome, and please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Ernold. So my name is Mystqx Skye, and I'm one of the panelists for the Multiculturalism is the New Normal. So I joined Golden Door last year, 2020, and for this year, I'm joining as a panelist for this one, the Multiculturalism is the New Normal.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your short introduction. And I would like also to have the amazing Tahira. So please, Tahira, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, a warm welcome to all of you, and I'm happy to be here. My name is Tahira De Silva. I'm from Goa, India. I was the silver winner last year for joint winner last year for the Golden Door 2020 awards for my essay and blog writing. And as an ambassador, I'm pleased to be here. I'm an architect, I'm a writer, I'm an educator, and I work with children. And through my work with children, I hope to give a voice to, their wishes, their actions, what they think.
Well, thank you very much. And I also want to say to our amazing audience, if you would like to join the conversation as a panelist, and of course you can do that, please raise your hands or let's say leave a message in the Q&A and we will definitely get you in. But however, if you'd like to share any opinion, if you have any questions, please let us know. Now, I know this whole conversation is going to start about the amazing multiculturalism, and I just want to start with one question, or with the first question.
Second.
So
you need to introduce me. you need to introduce.
And of course, I can. And this is what happened with life. So we love to introduce, of course, and my apologies for that. Please, Tahira Amir Khan.
Okay, founder of Golden Door. And thank you for the partnership, Ernold of LernTV. Okay, thank you so much for hosting this for us today. Before I share a bit of myself, I just want to say that because Mystqx is too humble that she did not say that she was the second prize winner for the poetry. She just totally left that out. I don't know why, but I will say that for her. So anyway, so this is the second year of the Golden Door Awards, and we're very happy that we have had a successful opening ceremony, and we have all these dialogues. And it's about, I think, 10 dialogues we have planned for this year. And yes, a little bit about my background, technologist, now author and speaker and innovator, visionary, humanitarian. Very short and simple. So now I pass it to you, Arnold, and the content of this panel. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. And again, my apologies for not giving you the chance to introduce because, well, I have to say that because of Tahira, we are not able to have this amazing Open Doors event. And I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you, Tahira, for organizing this amazing event for today. Now, before we're just going to start, and I know that Mystqx and Tahira are waiting for the amazing conversation, I'm just going to drop the question, and that is, why is multiculturalism so important in the society? And I'm just going to pass the microphone to everyone who wants to speak first. And otherwise, I will assign. Yes.
I can go first. I think it's important. I don't know, whether we accept many things in society, because what happens is we live in a society. If humans were to live on their own, in an isolated manner, I think even when we say that, we have a kind of nature around us that we respond to, right? Where you cannot ever say that a person can live in isolation on his own, right? So even in isolation, we have a connection to nature, and therefore we have to exist with a bond with that nature. So similarly, when we talk about the human race, we have people coming from different backgrounds, and the more we accept each other, the more living becomes easy when we do that. And if you look at history, especially because today we live in a democracy, we've had autocratic regimes, we've had so many layers of kings ruling over a place, we have colonizers are ruling over a place. And what has evolved is a trickling down of each of these maybe individual personalities of people, different people. And why that is important is because it builds tolerance. Now, I remember my years of growing up. We lived in a colony which had people from different religious backgrounds. Possibly, since I'm a Christian, we were in a minority. But what was beautiful was the sharing, the sharing and the interconnectedness, which you don't find today. Today, our lives have become so isolated, right? We are in our cocoons, we are in our, spaces. And the lockdown has, in fact, aggravated this. But the, networking, the meeting of people, the exchange of religious practices, even talking about each other's stories, stories about our own villages brought about so much tolerance. And I think that is important. Tolerance also teaches us to be respectful to each other. And I think if we can't be respectful, what happens? We see, countries that are in strife, countries that are in conflict. Even in India, we have so much conflict sometimes, although we are the largest diverse people living in the country. And I think that is brought about simply because there is intolerance. And the more diverse we are, look at animals in nature. Look at nature itself. You have trees, different kind of trees, and you have the different species living together. Sometimes it's a symbiotic relationship, sometimes it is a parasitic relationship, and sometimes it is a little different. But all of them contribute. The moment there is an imbalance, it leads to the extinction, let's say, of that species. And I think that is simply, the fact that if we don't learn to be tolerant, it only leads to, disruptions. It leads to war and therefore nearly extinction. And I don't only mean, again, religious tolerance. I mean environmental tolerance also. Today, what do we find? That we are not respectful to environment, let alone humans, other humans from other backgrounds. And what is that leading to? Environmental degradation is leading to, slowly our own extinction. So therefore, I feel strongly that, multiculturalism, it is important to have diverse people all around us. It is important to have different people all around us, because it only teaches us to be more compassionate, to be more, tolerant and accepting.
Well, thank you, Tallulah, for this valuable share. Because absolutely, I totally agree with the things you have covered. Mystqx, what are your, let's say, your vision, your vision, what you would like to share about this multiculturalism?
Okay. I think there is really a need to accept this new norm. A need, I say, because, during the past years, decades, there's a rapid change in technological changes. And this has forced our society to actually open up, like to other countries, other worlds easily. And then it has transformed how we actually learn to socialize with people. And for example, now even if I'm Europe, I can have friends like somewhere in Asia and still be connected there, and have a normal relationship even if it's too far. So this multiculturalism is like really bringing in togetherness, and finding like strength and unity even if there are differences in our beliefs. For example, I have friends who's like Muslim, Jews, and other religions as well. And then when we get together because of COVID, so we are not able to meet, but then we schedule like Zoom sessions together. And it's important that we don't fight over things that we don't agree, but we find like a common ground. And that is like the start of accepting that multiculturalism in our country or in our society is actually there. Like for example, my friend who is Muslim is married to a Christian, which is like, if you think like 10 years before, that is so not normal. But in this day and age, there are ways, or we find how we can actually adapt to like bringing in difference or diversity, and finding like a unity or togetherness in that. So I think there is really a need for people to accept that this is now like the new norm in the society.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And you make a really amazing point about when it comes to religion, comes about marriage, and of course, getting connected, because the whole pandemic from, let's say, 2020 brought us all together. Now, I know we have Tahira, who are going to ask the same question. What's your view, your vision, and what have you, let's say, seen happening regarding multiculturalism?
For me, I've been brought up in multiculturalism. Singapore is a multicultural country. I was never really exposed to racial thinking. I could not understand it, actually. Even though my own self, my own family, we're a mix of 4 races, you know. So, and then we were brought up in a very Western thinking and also Eastern. So I'm Afghan, Iranian, Indian, and Kashmiri. So it's a mix of so many. And but then we spoke English at home, and then we also took up Japanese. And so it was that kind of thing. And then the kind of music we would listen to was Western music. So we just got used to it. And my friends were Indian, Chinese, Malay, all that. So it was very, very natural for me. I'm not used to a single race. I'm not used to something being like going to a place where everybody's the same. I'm actually not used to it. It makes you feel uncomfortable. So because of the way I've been brought up, and because of the harmony I've seen from young, I've never been viewed upon as, oh, you're Afghani and you're probably of that very religious. You know, there's a label about being Afghan, that terrorism, religious. I never got that, ever. So I could never understand it. So I think one thing I realized, because I never faced it, and it was never in my mind, I never faced racism, because it was never in my world. But maybe also that could be partly luck. But then again, I do believe our mindset affects us. Like, for example, we feel that, oh, I'm of a I'm of a minority. Then you will start attracting that kind of, reaction from people. If you always think that you're minority, that you will always, be, like a misfit, then you will start attracting that. It's a law of attraction, right? If you don't think that, the chances of happening is less. This is what I believe. So I always say to people that don't say that I'm the only Indian, I'm the only Chinese. Try to fit in. In our community, Afghani community, you can't even tell. You go to Australia, You meet an Afghan and you can't even tell the Afghan. They're like the Australians. You go to Italy, the Afghans there, they seem Italian. They're so well integrated with the community. So it's a mindset. This is for me, I feel it's a mindset. We have to shift our own selves. So that is my vision, actually, what I feel and what I've seen. It's my own life.
And I think, well, Tahira, thank you for that, because this is what I want to move, let's say, swift the conversation a little bit about. And I know, for example, Mystqx, who lives in Germany, I live in the UK, Tahira lived in Singapore, and Tallulah lives in India. Now, my question is to you all, and I'm going to start with Mystqx. When you moved to Germany, how was that for you as moving from, let's say, because you mentioned the Philippines, and you also have lived in other different countries, but well, you have settled now in Germany. So how was that for you, let's say, the first step in a country that was, well, not your culture, maybe your religion, but a totally different environment?
I'm actually in Zurich, but I lived in Germany.
Sorry, Switzerland. Right. My apologies.
No worries. I lived in Germany before I moved here. So I lived first in the Philippines, and then I moved to Thailand, and then to Hong Kong a few years, Singapore, and then Germany, and then here. So because I work in the travel and tours before, so I'm assigned to different. What I experienced there is it's like both worlds. Most people think that labeling or not accepting multicultural is just like the European against Asian, but the Asians does it as well. So we are guilty as well of doing, but we don't just see it. And what my mindset before was like what Tahira said was, if I go to another country, like if you go to Rome, you do like the Romans do. That's the first one. I try to adapt first to where I am, because I feel like I am the guest in their country, and I then try to adapt. The first thing is to understand really them before you express like your own views and opinions, because then it's like you have to educate yourself first to where you are before you start expressing your own opinion about this and that. It's like always when I see or when I experience something, I always like stop myself, because this is my experience and this is not like the whole country. When I experience a person, like for example, some people say in Germany, people are very like rude or straight. And then I kind of like stop myself before saying, yeah, they are. Because, my one experience or my two experience doesn't really speak for the whole country. So the mindset is really just being open about other people and trying to understand them instead of putting in just what you believe before. So it's important that I think in my book that I wrote, Educate Your Opinion, it's really about educating yourself first to where you are, to which country you are. And the first thing they have to do is understand. So when you try to understand people, you judge less and you accept more of who they are. I mean, of course, I am happy to be there, and at the same time happy to share my culture and still being me, even if
Right.
there are different cultures where I have to integrate. But then if I don't really like try to embrace, or not even embrace, if I just don't try to understand them and just put myself a little bit like this is me and that is them, then that's the start of like having a barrier, and then you don't try to open up to their culture, because it's like you putting yourself in their hundreds of years culture. And if you just try to think in a very narrow-minded way because of what you felt or your experience with one or two people, then the discourse starts.
Yes, absolutely. And I know, Tallulah, you live in India, And for me, outsider, let's say, I've been a couple of times to India, and for me, it was more, oh yes, in India, they speak Hindi, that's it, everybody's the same. However, it was not, because people speaking Tamil, you have so many different cultures within India. So how is that for you? Because, well, and whatever part you are in India, how is that with the Indian culture indirectly?
So this will be a shocker to you, but it is said that, every 100 kilometers you move across India, you'll find the dialect changing, the people changing, the culture, the food, everything changing. And I think that's the beauty about it, because, there are people with so many, beautiful things, right? Right from their histories to their land, to their stories, to their festivals. I think it's something that I at least enjoy. And I've been to a lot of different places in India, and they're really diverse, right from, the snow deserts in the Himalayas to the hot and humid, tropical, spots in the southern region of India. So I think, it is important to understand that. I think it's an asset. The more diversity there is, I think it's an asset for the country, it's an asset for its people, And Goa itself is said to be very cosmopolitan, because we've had the Portuguese as colonizers, and there's so much vibrancy. We have Indians from the rest of India coming into Goa, and they sense, the liberal nature of the people. They feel a sense of freedom. You have young couples, dressing, like as if, they were coming from a European country. So I think, that kind of liberty and freedom is something to be experienced. Having said that, I remember growing up, and, I had a lot of misconceptions, and there's always, the India-Pakistan, divide, and or the Hindu-Muslim divide. And I remember, that when I went, to Geneva, many years ago, I met a youth, we had a convention for youth from all across the world. And I had friends from Pakistan who I met there. And it seemed so good, because, they were just like everybody else. And so, there are preconceived notions, there are aspersions cast on people from certain, religions, or people from certain backgrounds. But I think it is important for us to look at each human as a human first, and to embrace that aspect of humanity first. And I think the differences that we have in terms of religion, culture is a positive, So it's just like a character of a person, right? We have a positive aspects and we have a negative aspects. We don't really focus on, the negative aspects of every person, because of course, every person will have those flaws. But when we focus on the positives, you only see beauty. So I think our approach should be like that. And I think, that was something that, that was one of the values I grew with. There was no discrimination. And even when there is discrimination, you have to take the first step, where you embrace the other person, you enforce, respect to one another. And in my work with children, that is what we do. We work with children coming from different backgrounds, or even young people from different backgrounds. If we find that there is conflict, we immediately address it by, mutual respect. That has to be one of the most important tenets, that we have to comply with.
Well, that was amazing. Thank you, Tallulah. And I just want to, because I know that Tahira lives in Singapore, and Singapore is over multicultural. Yes. And this is well, I live in the UK, who is also multicultural, and try to make the best for everybody in the country. Right. Now, I know that history have literally learned us a lot of things. For example, if we go to Middle East, people think that women have no rights. When we say we're going to Asia, they're going to say like, well, in China, for example, you only they only want to have a boy and not a girl. However, times has changed, and not everybody understand that these times, as you can see now, like Mystqx in Switzerland. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And you in India, Tallulah, and of course, Tahira in Singapore, and me in the UK. Now, what about, let's say, because the pandemic indirectly have brought us all together, and I'm just going to heat up a little bit the conversation, but there is also, we're also dealing not just only with culture, we're not also dealing with religion, but we're also dealing with, let's say, what we call the LGBTQ, so about like, well, same-sex marriage. So I'm just going to go to, let's say, to Tahira about Singapore. So how is Singapore, how open is Singapore for, let's say, the same-sex relationships?
Not so open. Not so open. It's because Singapore is a modern society, but also a bit conservative. They're afraid that it might open up a can of worms. If allow same-sex marriages, something will happen. So they are very careful. And also there is a strong Muslim and Christian community there. There's got the Muslim is Muis, and then there's a strong Christian community. Many of the politicians are Christians. So they have an influence. Even though in Singapore, you don't really have religion as a subject, I think, anymore in schools. I'm not sure, I have to check that out. But I remember that they had phased out religion. They wanted to, again, not touch onto touchy subjects which would affect the things like this. They don't want to have riots. They don't want to have any kind of chaos. So, and they don't want to talk about it so much. They have this, there's this place in Singapore where you can make a small protest, but it's controlled. So it's not fully accepted yet, but they're not so hard on them. It's a bit like Switzerland, I would say. Yeah, very low profile in that way. So I think that's a good thing also, because when you're too harsh, that can cause a lot of problems, but also you need to be a bit careful. Because I think, this is my opinion, okay? I feel that certain countries have gone a bit too liberal about this, that children get confused.
Right.
You cannot say, this is what I feel, you cannot say the child needs to decide their gender. They don't know at that age. You cannot say a 2-year-old, 3-year-old boy. They don't know. So this is what I don't believe in that, okay? So they have to be very careful when it comes to these things. Also, we should not mistreat a person who's homosexual. You should not label them. So we have to play this very carefully with respect. And I think that's what Singapore does. And that's why there's been not any really major issues. Yes. You want to say something, Mystqx?
Yeah, actually, this is a very timely topic, the one Ernold asked, LGBTQ, because in Switzerland, we had to vote like every month. It's like a monthly thing. We vote for every rights, every law change, everything. And this month, we just received a ballot about voting for gender equality, for marriage for all sexes, all races. Like there will be no just man and woman. And I voted yes, actually. I voted yes for this equality. And I was asked in the community, like, for example, but how do you know which is the dad and which is the mom? And I really had, I had like a strong opinion about this, because I have friends who did it as well. Like they're gay couples with children, and I think they're raising their children really well. So it was a question that made me really think before I voted yes for equal marriage for LGBTQ, because I think when I was asked that question, like, how do you know who's the mom or who's the dad in the relationship? It's a valid question, but I think you don't even define that. I think if you decide to be the mom, you can be called the mom. If the other one decides to be the dad, they can be called the dad. The more important thing for me there is, if this couple who decided to get married because they're legally allowed, and to have kids as well because they're legally allowed, that they shower, or they, bring this child with love and openness and open-mindedness. I think that's more important, because I also, when my mom was very active in Rotary in the Philippines, I saw a lot of cases. I saw lots of cases of children being abused or children being abandoned, and they are from normal family, like, they are from married man and woman, but just got abandoned, or they got abused or so. So I think the question there is not really the gender of who's going to be like the mom and dad. I think it's more important that these two couple know how to treat their kids, or their rights properly, in accordance with who they are dealing with. But we don't know yet what the result is. It's going to be still at the end of this month, but people are already given the right to vote for that. So if that gets approved in Switzerland by end of the month, I think, then it will be legalized here. The LGBTQ or same sex or whatever marriage, plus the normal rights like having kids and all those political financial rights.
And Tallulah, would you like to add on it as well? Because I know that
Yes.
India have
Yes.
announced a couple of years ago about this matter of, let's say, about opening. So please.
So yes, I think, and particularly in Goa, we've had LGBT, a lot of meetings, parades. People have done, almost like a festival, in a small number. Goan society is very aware. Goa is the smallest state in India, and like I said, people are very liberal here, and there's a lot of acceptance. So I have a lot of friends also, gay couples who live here in Goa, and they do feel that the society is very liberal. They feel safer. However, having said that, we still have issues with rapes in India, where women are ill-treated. There's a lot of abuse, and like Mystqx mentioned, children, being abused and abandoned. Okay, so I think the important thing is, to talk about commitment, to talk about respect, and to enforce it and practice it. So in the groups that I work with, whether it is college students or a community of parents or children, we talk about enforce the, first the value of commitment, in any relationship. And just like we have tolerance to, people from different backgrounds, whether they are from privileged, underprivileged backgrounds, whether they are of different color, like we say, respect is very, very important. Acceptance is very, very important. I think if we do that, then that's the first hurdle, And of course, then there is law, okay, but still laws are violated. Still many of the atrocities are happening, and it is happening because of a lot of issues, right? There's no monitoring, there's no enforcement of law. Having said that, I think as a community, we need to grow where we have increased tolerance. And like Tahira said, I too agree there has to be a balance. It cannot be one-sided. It cannot be too liberal also, because then again, there are problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's always an amazing and great topic to talk about. We always talk about religion, and we always talk about different cultures, but you see not much have covered about the LGBTQ. What I think is something that we, especially like, for example, in the UK, it's open. It doesn't matter what religion you have. It doesn't matter what kind of culture, where you come from. We are all one. Now, I'm just gonna take the heat off, and we're just going to go back to, let's say, and because we talk about more cultures, And I just mentioned the LGBTQ, but I also have, and you won't believe this, but people who have different dietaries. You have now vegans, vegetarians, you have now people eating meat.
Yes.
And I know this is all really soft, but when you see in the world, when people say, oh, I'm a vegan, you build up a little bit of friction with some people. So I just want to start, and it's a subject that also has been talking too much. So let's say I'm going to start with Tallulah, because I know in India vegetarian is quite big. So
yes,
could you tell me a little bit of what you think about that culture, if it's about dietaries, about choices that people make?
I think we've had a history, and the discriminations or the perceptions have been pretty bad, in the sense that in India, if you talk about having beef, let us say, or eating meat, you're looked down upon, because in India, as part of our culture and religion, we respect, the cow is worshipped, for example. In Goa too, there is a huge divide between the Catholics and the Catholics, Muslims, as against Hindus, because I've heard of many people talk about the Christians being pig eaters. So I think these labels are there, and today it is changing, because so in my work environment, I have a lot of young people who are interns. They come to do their training, and they come from places, and they have practices where they're pure vegetarian. So some, even to the extent of not eating garlic, onion, and certain other vegetables. So, but I found that the younger generation is much more tolerant, and we've all sat together, and in spite of our differences, we're able to enjoy our meals, because I think that is the value that I've grown with, in a setup where you're already going to college, where there are people coming from different backgrounds and different practices. You have to respect that, and today veganism is growing. I have friends who have done, they've sort of made a conscious decision, to change. And I think I think we just have to be simply respectful. It is one of the aspects of multiculturalism. And I think just like how, there are different kinds of animals, there are animals that eat grass, there are animals that eat insects, and there are humans also that eat worms and snakes and everything else, right? So I think we need to change the way we look at these things. They're not limitations, but they're things to also celebrate, and they're things to also be curious and learn about. When I was traveling to a place called Dalian in China, I had friends from Russia, and they were so excited, and I was very tired. I was in my hotel room, and they said, Tahira, you must come, because we're all trying to eat maggots today. And I, of course, excused myself, but I think we have all kinds. And finally everything breaks down to a chemical, right? Whether it is protein, whether it is carbohydrates, or it is fats. And as a human race, again, we break down to a singular cell that unites us. And I think that is it. We don't need to look beyond. We need to focus on that unifying character, the unifying element, and be respectful to the choices that people make. Of course, they are very serious choices sometimes, because people are talking about climate change today, and people have made conscious decisions to turn vegan as a step to, mitigate, let's say, climate change. So all we can do is, be respectful and proud of their choices.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tallulah. And yes, I know, because I know in India there is a lot of when it comes to food, there is a lot of traditions, a lot of respect, and a lot of other things that come with it.
Yes.
I'm just going to jump over to Switzerland to Mystqx. So how is it, for example, in Switzerland? How is that culture at the moment?
Here, the people are very food conscious. I tell you, the first time I arrived here, I thought it's too much. They think of chickens, for example, they think of chickens like they don't want to buy chickens who's not in a free farm. If the chicken has been raised in like a cage or so, people tend not to buy it. It's more expensive. but people choose that because they said it's respect to the chicken. And for example, wolves, they really have to vote if they want to kill the wolves because the wolves ate too much sheep for one eating, and the sheep that died is not nice, like that doesn't like equate to what the wolf did. So they have a very high standard in the way they eat. And I actually love food, so I cannot say that I will be changing to vegan or so. But my kids, for example, one of my kids is like seeing that he wants to change, he wants to be a vegan, and for me, I respect the choice. If he wants to go there, I try to prepare a meal for him because I think it boils down to respect. Like this is what he wants to do, and this is what he wants to eat. He doesn't want to eat meat because of his own values. So he's trying to form his own values, and for me, that's okay. And I want him to see that if I am eating meat, he has to respect that as well. The only thing that I think matters is you eat and you respect the food that you eat. I mean, there are science or technology that says even plants have feelings. Like I read somewhere that, for example, when an elephant eats like this tree, and when he moves to the next tree, he can't eat that other tree anymore because it feels like it's a little bit poisonous or it smells something different. So science says that even trees or plants have feelings. So if you're like a vegan and if you want to fight against people who like eat meat, you can have this discussion. But I think if we respect each other's choices, and then if us we make a conscious effort that we eat to fulfill our needs and not to, not to waste it, then I think it's all right to be either vegan or eating meat. It's just really like finding the balance in it.
And you got an amazing point talking about respect of the food that people eat. And I know this is a sort of culture that has been built. Now, Tahira, my question for you is about like different religions have also different dietaries. So I'm talking about halal, talking about kosher, and of course there are many, many more. But because of that, you get a little bit an stamp on your head, like when you eat halal, you're Muslim, when you're Muslim, and etc., etc. So, for example, how is that in Singapore with about when it comes to when you walk in a shop, or let's say you have a business meeting, and then you have to tell like, listen, I can't eat because I eat kosher or I eat halal. How deal people with that kind of questions, let's say, or dietaries? Or
you mean based on my experience? I'm actually born Muslim, and of course I grew up with not eating pork, and halal was introduced to me. But when I understood what halal really meant, because I looked at the science, the halal was actually a more humane way of executing the animal. It's a more humane way of executing. It has to be an animal. So it's no such thing as a halal vegetable, actually. So because there's blood involved. So it's a very quick cut. And that's why it's halal, it's humane. They lost the meaning of that. So even my family is both Muslims and Christians. Okay. So we don't put the emphasis on this anymore. But we focus on, if I would buy something, I would rather have it get halal, if it's a genuine halal, because there are a lot of fake halals now. It's just because they put the stamp there, halal, and it's got a higher price or it's sellable. So it's not really halal. So anyway, so I don't really look for it, but if it's there, I would generally go for that because I know the animal is being treated better. And I'm also one of those people like this, you would say that they would go for the chicken, that I'm those sort of people who would go for the chicken has been caged, I'm not going to buy that chicken. I'm not going to, I go for the free range chicken. I go for those eggs which are born of free range chicken because I care about the chicken. It's a conscious being, it's a sentient being. So we're all different. Yeah. Yes. So I look at the fact that the animal is blood involved. There's more. There's pain. Pain levels are different. Different consciousness. The different levels of pain also. So yes, because my own family and also in Singapore, they do, like, you go to a restaurant, there are two different areas. If you go to a cafeteria, they do have a halal area and the non-halal. It's very normal. You can even go to the non-halal place. Nobody really bothers. It's average, it's normal. It's a normal way of life. So it's respected. That's one thing. It's very normal because it's respected. And I always feel one thing. I feel when they start abusing it, start commercializing this whole thing, they put halal in everything. Halal cosmetics, halal this. There's no, actually not really halal. It's just labeling and it's just trying to market, right? So that's going another extreme. So I think the diversity in terms of diets, when it comes to religion, is just understanding why do they have that and the real meaning. Understand what is this halal really mean? I think that's important. A non-Muslim should also need to understand what does it really mean, and they'll also want to practice it. Sometimes different cultures have some good things to learn from.
Yes, yes.
Right? And we may not realize why do they do this? There could be something. And then some other things could be just based on superstition, but we need to find out. So that's another thing, is understanding. Besides respect is understanding. Go and research and find out why is this being done for years and years and years. There's a reason behind it.
I also just wanted to add two things. One is, see, many of these practices, as children, we learn from, just something that has been taught to us, that we have been exposed to. So we're not really consciously doing. I'm sure that if we were given a chance as children, and were made more aware, how many children do really know what goes into, the process of bringing the food to their table? Like in Goa, we're fish eaters, but people don't think that, killing fish is wrong, because when you catch fish, you don't see the blood, you don't see anything, So somehow everybody expects the food on their plate, the fish on their plate, as if it's their right. But of course, the fish also goes through a lot of pain, So I think the way we understand things with the food that we eat is, it's not fully understood. Children don't fully understand. And I think when they grow up, it is fair enough that once they know, they make a decision for themselves, and we need to respect that. For example, my son, one of my children, when they used to go to school, he would say, Mama, I don't want to take anything which is non-vegetarian, because, I have friends who bring only vegetarian food. And since we share, I don't want to take it. And I would, not sort of force him, in fact, facilitate in whatever manner I could, to help him take only vegetarian, food to his school. Lastly, I want to share with you a very lovely, innocent notion, So when my son, my older son, was very small, he did not know, how, because I had not taken him to the market. So he did not know where meat comes from. So one day, I asked him, I said, you like beef, right? Do you know how it comes to your table? And he said, yes, Mama, you just have to go to the animal and you just scoop out how much you want. And then you just take it. So it's a very, very innocent notion. Children have a very innocent way. I don't think any child would think in a very, violent way, and they be aware of it, that it's causing harm to a particular animal when we consume a particular animal. But when they know, when they're aware, and of course, like Tahira said, when they're aware of certain practices, they learn also to respect it. They also learn to explain about it to their friends. And I think that is important. Awareness, understanding, and then having respect to people's choices.
Yes, and you make that a really correct point on that. And we also have just going to jump quickly to the chat, because we have an amazing question.
There's a question there, yeah.
Yes, from Walter. Now, I'm not going to read everything, But I think what is what the question is, what contain the question is about how let's say we all get educated, we all got well educated. However, we not always get the culture educated. So what will be the best way to have well educated, still educated multiculturalism?
I think, the practices need to start in school and at home, of course. I teach a number of children, and in a very informal way. There are about 20 children, especially during the pandemic. We have something called the community classroom. And we were just checking, we have about, children which speak. So we have 7 different languages, amongst just 20 children. And therefore, even their culture is different. We do cookouts, and every child then says, there is a child from Nepal. And, the child says, ma'am, I'm going to, teach you how to make this, So I think if these kind of practices, we are learning about it in school, right? We learn from books. If you look at social studies, history, geography, these specific subjects, the wealth of knowledge that is a child learns from the book is amazing. But how do we learn today? We are not learning from practice. We are learning just by rote. We're just learning about it as words. But I think if, sort of an inquiry project is done, where we celebrate the cultural differences. Like I have a harvest festival. There is a reason why I celebrate a particular festival. I do a particular rite or a puja, when you embrace it, when you are participating in it, I think that brings about an understanding of the variety, the diversity, and the wealth in it. There's always a particular value to be learning from it. Like the harvest festival, we have a harvest festival too, and it happens in the month of August. And, for this period, we've been taking children to do farming. So they've understood how, a farmer has to do a lot of hard work to be able to grow that, grain of rice. And then there is a connection to our culture. There is a feast that is celebrated at the church when the first, year of corn is cut. It is called the Consache Fest. So children understand it when they participate in it. And it doesn't mean that only that person from that particular religious background or who's practicing, that particular festival has to, celebrate it. It has to be people from all, different religious backgrounds. And we have that practice here in Goa. We have church festivals feasts where people from, whether they are Muslim, whether they are Christian, or whether they are Hindus, they participate in the church. And similarly, in the Hindu festivals, we have Christians celebrating, in their festival. This is very important. And when children are exposed to this, they learn that tolerance. My father and my mother and my parents were both Christian, but my father was raised in a rural village school, and where he had to learn in a different language, which is Marathi, which is one of the regional languages, not English. And his school premises was in a temple, So while my mother had these very strong Catholic, practices, my father was so comfortable with the Hindu practices. So we grew up with those, and they were so amazing. I feel a lot of my tolerance is because, of this exposure. And I think this is very important. When children are exposed to it, then they grow on to be adults, to be far more tolerant and far more respectful.
Yes.
And I think that is that's absolutely, well, this is what you see, and let's say for the last years, that when it comes to education, when it comes to that, well, let's say schools trying to teach everybody, let's say a part of multicultural, there is only one thing, and that's the history. Because when people talking about or sharing, let's say the teachers are sharing things about history, then the diversity comes a little bit above, let's say, everything. And we got explained why, but I will say that's where it indirectly starts. But Mystqx, what do you think that could, let's say, help the modern world getting even more in the multiculturalism?
Okay, with regards to history, yeah. So my My family is bi, so they're Swiss and Filipino. And in the Philippines, you're taught about colonialism from like grade 1, because we've been colonized for like 300 years from different countries. So people in the Philippines have like embraced really the foreign culture very good, but then the older generation have still this, like the Japanese bombed us or the Japanese rape our women and all that. And that's history. You cannot erase that. So what I'm trying to teach my kid, because here they look the world here like in a bubble. Here it's like everything like regulated, and so, and in the Philippines not. So what I teach them, which I also put in my book, Educate Your Opinion. I actually wrote that because of them. It's very important for me that they learn to accept these two cultures, both the good and the bad. Plus, the history is very important. Like in the book, I wrote about REEF, REAF. It's about respect, empathy, acceptance, and forgiveness. So when we are talking about, for example, why are you speaking English, mommy, when that's not your language? Because in the Philippines, we have another language. And then I told them, because we've been colonized. And then you started explaining the history, and then they think it's war and everything like that. And then they ask why. So why are you still speaking this language if you've been colonized by these Americans? And so I told them that, it's the past, you cannot change it, but that doesn't define the future. You have to stop there. You know the history and you respect what happened, and then you have to educate yourself that in order for that not to happen again, you have to learn to forgive, and then from you starts the change. So if they learn to accept the good things which came from the colonization, not just what happened with bombing or raping the woman or so like that, because you cannot change the past. It's already over, but we can do something in the future if we tell them you have to learn to accept that, forgive, and try to move on to, try to make it better. How can you make it better? Because, even in the war, they said the victims of the war, we have to respect their pain, and I understand that. Nobody can tell you it's 10,000 years and you have to be over, because each has their own pain tolerance. But they have, I'm just teaching them to learn how to respect that pain from other people who've gone through that history, try to accept it, and then try to move on to, trying to think how they can be a better part of the society by not diversifying or finding unity in these differences that we have. So I teach them to like pick up really the good things, and then from there try to shift how they think. Because if they don't understand why you have to stop the hatred from what happened before, it's just really going to continue, and it's going to be stuck in their mind just there. So they have to like, move forward to something good or take something better out of the situation and think forward.
Yes, well, thank you, Mystqx. And Tahira, what are your thoughts about this modern multiculturalism and how to educate them more about culture?
I want to actually answer the question by Walter, okay, because he talks about here, I'm reading his detailed question. He talks about emotional intelligence and about how there must be a middle way between being too liberal or too conservative in sensitive topics. All these are sensitive topics, racial, religion, what kind of food you eat, the kind of life you have. All these are kind of sensitive. The relationships you want to choose, that's another thing. They also have the kind of relationships. It's not the gender, the kind of relationships. There's polygamy, monogamy, there's so many new things. I've been stunned when I watch Facebook. There's so many new things going on. So this EI, which he's mentioning here, being the overarching solution, I believe we have to try and educate people to acquire emotional intelligence, not just intelligence as in, the IQ, which you've been focusing on in school, which is knowledge-based intelligence, that kind of knowledge-based intelligence, but there are various intelligence. And how can we use that to deal with all these issues, He's written here, concerns me deeply that people from good families and have significant education do not have emotional intelligence to respect people of multicultural. Can the panel provide any suggestions, solutions to help people who and well-educated that do not see the basic emotional intelligence to create harmony amongst multiculturalism? For me, it's about taking time to listen and to understand. Whether people are willing to understand and not judge quickly. We automatically judge because based on what we've been exposed to since we were a child. And then we say, this is not the way it's supposed to be. But have we taken time to understand? You see, so like, for example, talking about, let's say religion, okay? This is a very sensitive topic. And what I've been brought up with, not based on my parents, but based on relatives, because don't forget, I come from the Afghani culture, very religious, my aunts wear full hijab, okay, the full hijab. My other aunts married off at 13, 14 years old. We were the first batch, my siblings are the first ones who educated. Along with my father was educated also, but the daughters were never educated. So in that way, they did not understand all these things. So they were born with judgment already. And because of that, in my family, we wanted to come out of that. When you've seen too much judgment, too much that married off as child bride, no education, and you have to be this religion, otherwise you are done. You have to be this, everybody's a non-believer, you burn in hell. Hell fires are waiting for you. And it happens also in the other religions, same thing, the fear, okay? All these breaks multiculturalism. It does not allow for it. It automatically creates a division, the fear. And I believe even in the UK, you cannot say completely that it's completely free. There are also radical groups there. I have met, those religious groups in the UK. They do not want to mix with the others. It's there, especially when it's a more Western country. You see? So what is it about? It's really about soul searching and understanding who we are, why we're here. If I understood why I'm here, I would not be focusing on breaking on disunity and looking at all these things. It's actually petty. I'm going to look at the big picture. I'm going to look at humanity as a whole. We need to understand why we're here, knowing who you are. If you ask anybody who's a truth seeker, who's trying to search why they're here and who they are, I'm telling you, guaranteed, they're not going to be a bigot. They're not going to be racist. Very rare will they be that.
Right.
Very rare. So you have to know who you are. You need to know why you're here, and you need to focus on, okay, I need to leave behind a legacy. This is the reason why I'm here. I need to do this. You will not look at all these things.
Mm-hmm. But I think also, from the perspective of the question, which talks about good families and significant education, I think what is lacking is also, the busting of prejudices. So when you look at, so even if you have a good education, we still need look at people who don't have an opportunity to educate themselves in a prejudiced way, right? So only but they still have skills. Let's say, there is somebody who can build something with his or her hands, and that is a skill. And you may be an academician with more knowledge, but that doesn't, devalue the person who has hand-based skill. So I think it is important when we talk about multiculturalism to also look at bringing, these two groups together, the privileged and the ones who have less privileges, because it teaches you, the things that each one lacks and how they can contribute to the betterment. It doesn't mean that if you have everything, let us say you have the money, you have the education and everything, that doesn't mean you have everything. And what is important is to respect those who don't, because there's a lot that you can, learn from there. In India, we've had a history of the intolerances of our history, So because you may have heard of the Babri Masjid issue,
Yes.
where constantly, and this is not just at Ayodhya, which was the birth of one of the gods, Hindu gods. It is also everywhere. Like in Goa, we had the colonizers who were Portuguese. And when they were here, of course, there was, conversions. They were raising down of temples, churches were built. But what is key is we cannot, bring history back. I cannot go back and say that, oh, I can never be born. We have to accept the histories and we have to accept the positives. It is not that we should deny the negatives that happened. We should respect it, that it happened. And let's say so-and-so is not responsible for it. It is something that has happened. And we need to respect that. I think when we do that, then, it forms this new order, new beginning. And that is required today because the world is changing. And if we are not careful, then, there are bigger, problems that we need to address. And I would say, religious intolerances are far, far smaller, minuscule to be delving into. However, they are there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Talula. I think that's really a start. And coming from a marketing background, I think, and to answer that question as well regarding emotional intelligence, education is very important and it starts really with kids. I think for the older generations, it's really difficult to reach them. I think one of the solution could be if there's a law that could be passed that such cultural education can be integrated really in the school, like the teachers put that together in their curriculum. And then second is for the older generations, because not everyone has the chance to be exposed here and there to different cultures. And so I think it's also like a brand responsibility. Like, for example, in marketing, there's this brand awareness. And I think if every product or every company commits to that brand awareness of multiculturalism, they're going to portray their products that can reach really a big audience if they incorporate that in their brand awareness to market their products in such a way that multiculturalism is touched there, like respected, and they can show, for example, the strength in being different, that can actually touch people's lives and try to educate them in an emotional way. Because education is good for kids, but there are also the older generations who's like, for example, the one who's starting a family now, having kids, and then they don't go to school anymore, and then they don't get educated in such to be more open, or and it's the older generation who has like a deeper experience of a different world than us today, who is more tolerant of what is happening. So yeah, I think those two things, integrating it in the school system, having a law that integrates that in their curriculum, and the big part of our life right now with products like brand awareness, putting multiculturalism as like something positive, can, I think, influence the emotional intelligence of our society.
Okay.
Yes. And I think that because before, I'm just going to double check with Tahira, do we still have time, a little bit time, or?
I think we should actually, we've got a few minutes, like, 5-10 minutes max.
Then I'm just going to ask a quick questions to everybody. How would you see multicultural in the future? And I go to whoever wants to speak first.
Yeah, I just want to touch on one thing. In fact, I wanted to say this to Talula. I was going to ask you. There's one area which is still a deep pain, which is the caste system. It's a huge pain in India. And the whole world actually looks at that. Why is this there? It just breaks this whole multiculturalism. The untouchables in India, they're treated like, I don't know how to say, but this is some of the old paradigm that needs to go. It just needs to go. I think that there are certain things which just has to be abolished completely, totally abolished.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes. And the other thing I want to say also, because of the Afghan issue right now, okay, I think the world sees Afghani people as lower than them. That's why they treat them so badly. They think, okay, let's take the troops out and just let them fend for themselves. And look what's happening. They're just being beheaded. People are being slaughtered. There's the rape of women has gone accelerated the last 2 weeks, accelerated, because the world already looks at them as a lower, okay, let them suffer. Okay. Yeah. They don't look at them as human. Oh, right. Afghanistan, forget about that country. This is not the future of multiculturalism. We already look at them as a lower human. This needs to go. You need to look at them as yourself. They don't. I don't think the world looks at them as themselves. No. They forget about them. It's been going on for years. It's like Yemen. Forget about the children starving. It's going on for years. Forget about Syria. It's going on for years. Right. Yeah, they don't look at themselves as an extension. We need to look at the others as an extension of ourselves, not just the Syrians, the Afghanis. This is a problem.
Yeah. I think I would term this as the invisibilized. They are the people or a section of society or even individuals that get invisibilized. And I think we are very much responsible. So who can bring about the change? I think, the crux or the focus lies on children and how we raise children. I agree with you. In India, the caste system is so strong. That's also because we're often looking at somebody else doing our job. Somebody else cleaning our streets, even in the house, somebody else, a maid, somebody else doing the work for us, and it's menial work. It's, all the hard work, the dirty work, so to speak. And then, of course, it, trickles down to all the layers, so whether it is the city cleaners, whether it is the sewage cleaners, we still have Dalits who are ostracized in society. They are treated like untouchables. There's a lovely video that we've recently watched because, I was working on providing eco toilets to various communities. And there was this horrific film shown, to people, and on how there's a community that their only job is to, clean sewers. And it's the most
I wanted to talk about this.
Yes,
people have nightmares.
Right. And we are working, of course, through Human Rights Commission to completely take this off. And of course, in business, where we have designers, which are bring that element of empathy, where you design for a purpose to eliminate this kind of, getting, certain people to do the cleaning of the sewers. So what needs to, be changed is the mindset of children first. We need to invest in the education of children. I'm not talking about book education, but in the sense of empowering children to accept, people who come from, let's say, a lower caste. We should not be talking about this in a group. When we do educational programs, we enforce this, as a very, very sacrosanct rule that everybody will be not looked down upon by the inadequacies, let us say, because these are brought about by adults, right? It is adults, the elders in our homes, let us say, and like how Mystqx said, maybe the senior people who have not forgotten histories, who have not forgotten traditions, who have not forgotten that these caste barriers need to be removed. And what does it mean? It means that when we live in society, it means that when caste barriers are removed, we have to empower ourselves to do all the things on our own. It means that if I see litter on the street, it is my equal duty to pick it up. I cannot expect anybody else to do that. Because I am the perpetrator. I am the one who's causing the harm. And if you look at it, it's the rich few who are causing more damage, in every sense, whether it's damage to the environment, damage to people, when we talk about intolerances. I think the key lies in, how we invest in our children to abolish this. Because then children become the catalyst to change the attitudes of adults.
Yes. There needs to be a code of conduct.
Absolutely.
A planetary code of conduct of respect your home, respect others, and respecting the planet. Yes. I feel that there should be a global code of conduct. Everybody should follow this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
On my side, I want to end by saying that we need really a call to action. I mean, we can discuss this and we can put more solutions in our discussion, but I think there is a very big need to do a call to action to important bodies in the society, like for example, the government who passed laws,
Yes.
Business owners who's responsible for our everyday influencers, and the media. If this big three, for example, put in their agendas all the time before they air a news, before they pass a law, or before they put out a brand and try to market it to people, if they put, I think, in their priority that multiculturalism should be respected, and that they try not to diversify but to connect people in different cultures and show the beauty and the strength and the positive in it. If this like three big body try to incorporate that in everything they do, for every law that they want to pass, that they respect first the multiculturalism, or the business owners and the media, which is so big in influencing the society, I think we can see a positive change in the future.
Okay. Media plays a big part, yes. The mainstream media. Mainstream media is not easy to deal with. Just let you know.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the media and let's say everybody who are broadcasting the wrong ideas about different cultures, countries, especially taking really small videos and then send them on different social media platforms, say that this is happening indirectly. I will always say, do not listen to the media. Just listen to the people who are in the country itself.
Yes.
Because these people,
Yes,
these are the people who can bring you the truth, and not the media. Media is one thing. They want to make money.
Yeah.
And whatever news you're going to spread, whatever news, what happens in the world, it's all about targets and all about eyeballs, not about the culture, not about respect, and nothing to do with what's happening in the country. So I will say, and I don't know, I just got to double check with Tahira again.
Yeah.
If it's already time, then
It's
I want to thank, first of all, Mystqx, Tallulah, and of course Tahira from the Golden Doors, because she made it all possible. I want to close off with a small quote, and this one is from Mahatma Gandhi,
Okay.
and it's a nation's culture resides in the hearts and in the soul of its people. I want to thank you everybody to watching this amazing seminar, and I wish you all an amazing good morning, afternoon, and evening.
It's good morning for me. Thank you. See you.
See you.
See you all.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.